As a leader, have you had to lead through a decision that you necessarily didn't agree with? In this episode, we're going to unpack that. Stay tuned. Welcome, everybody, to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. Welcome, everybody, to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. I am your host, John Espinosa. Thank you for joining me today. I've been in the leadership business for the past 15 plus years, developing training for leaders, mentoring and coaching leaders, and standing right beside leaders as we help meet our mission of getting others to where they're going. In this episode, we're going to talk about how to lead through a decision that you don't necessarily agree with. I'm sure many of you, either as first-time leaders or even our seasoned leaders out there, there are decisions made. The old saying is way above our pay grade. And those decisions impact the workforce. So as frontline leaders, we're that glue between middle and senior management and the people that are getting the job done. So as frontline leaders, we have the biggest task a lot of the times of implementing that decision. And that decision could be a change to the current way or the current, processes or systems that we have in place, or that decision could be even worse, maybe a downsize in your organization, or maybe reorg. People are moving organizations. Your team may be changing drastically. So as a new leader, this can be very intimidating when you are asked to lead through a decision that was made that you don't necessarily agree with. So even as a leader today, I struggle with this. And here's why. I'm an emotional leader and I lead with my emotions on my sleeve. If I don't agree with something, it's hard to logically wrap my brain around reasons why we should be moving in that direction. But as a leader, our job is to lead change, is to make sure that the decisions for the good of the organization are implemented, whether we agree with them or not. I want that to be the very first thing that I get out before we dive into some of the tips and tricks that I'm going to share with you all. And that's important because as we move into the first phase of implementing a decision that we don't necessarily agree with, the first question you need to ask yourself is, what do I, as the leader, need to do to get on board with the decision? And I'm going to pause there because that is an important step. Before you can do any of the other things that we're going to talk about, ask yourself that important question. What do I need to do as the leader of this group, of this organization, of this team to get on board with the change? That could be doing research. It could be giving yourself a mental break. It could be asking why. Why are we going through this change? Help me understand from our senior leadership. And sometimes the answer is going to be just go get it done. I'm not saying it's a perfect world and you're going to get the explanation that you want, but understand that sometimes we as frontline leaders, we as first-time managers, first-time leaders, we just got to go implement that decision. So ask yourself that question. What do I need to get on board? Write down. I'm a big journaler. I like to write things down. That's how I process. I think out loud and I write it down, I memory jog it. So write down those ways that you can get on board. And then any differences, anything that just really bothers you or you need more information on, that's where you go have a conversation with your leader, with your manager, with your boss, with your senior leaders in the organization if you have that opportunity, and address it as, I understand the reason why we made the decision as an organization. Help me understand X. And X is going to equate to that one thing that you identified as you not being able to get on board with. So step one, ask yourself that question. Step two, and here's back to the writing in a journal. I want you to write a list of advantages and I want you to write a list of disadvantages to implement the decision. So advantages on one side, disadvantages on the other side. And this is important. And you can even walk your team through this. A lot of times this is centered around getting your mind in the right place so that you can go talk to your team. But if you're at that place and you're comfortable, depending on how large your team is, work through this one with your team. List of advantages, a list of disadvantages, And then what do we do when we have two lists? We close the gap. So we try to strengthen our advantages, identify those things that we see good in implementing that decision, and then the disadvantages. Identify the things that are going to be the challenges, that are going to be the roadblocks, that may be uncomfortable to you, because change is uncomfortable, and we have to realize that. So one, recognize our own feelings, but don't impart those feelings on others. Don't impart your biases on others. Let them come up with their own around the change, because you'd be very surprised. A change that I don't necessarily agree with, my team may see no issues with. So as a leader, your job is a lot easier. You just got to get through it versus making your team aware, creating desire, going through that whole change management process. Okay. So advantages, disadvantages, close the gap there. And then communication. I think, this is probably foundational. It's common sense that we have to communicate through change, or we have to communicate through a decision that if you don't agree with it as a leader and your team doesn't agree with the change or the decision that was made, then you got the cards stacked against you. You got to really work hard. You got to be overly optimistic, as you've heard me say, whenever you have to implement a change or implement a decision, especially if you do not agree with that. So there's some things that I want you to understand. One, make a case for change. And there's questions that are associated with that. So list the reasons. Why are we changing? Why was the decision being made? And then what challenges does your team see moving forward? What are those specific challenges implementing this decision will bring to the team, will bring to those individuals, will bring to the organization? You can start small and get very large in that. But that's going to go a long way with helping the team digest the information. Always share what you can share. As leaders, sometimes there's information that we can't share that's proprietary, that's outside the purview of the team. So share what you can share. Allow the team to digest the information, the decision, identify those challenges, and then come back. This is going to be a little bit. This is going to take some time when you're leading through a decision that you don't necessarily agree with, because you have to get your mind right as a leader in order for you to communicate to your team the decision and how your team is going to move forward with that decision. Another thing we can focus on is not if, but how we will navigate this change. It's not if we change, it's how. Once the decision has been made, you can't go back. So it's no use for you as the leader to communicate that. So how are we going to navigate through this change? Commitment is very important for us as a leader to make sure we have when we're navigating through a change or a decision that you and your team don't necessarily agree with. Ask the question, can you support this? And then pause. And that pause is going to feel like it's taking forever. Trust me. And if you have to go around the room and ask each one of the individuals in the room, can you support this? We don't have to agree with the change. We don't have to agree with the decision, but we do have to support it. There's no going back. We're moving forward. How can we navigate through this challenge, through this change? I hope this has helped you all. I know this is something that I struggle with. So hopefully by sharing with you all just some tips and tricks that I go through will help you as a leader navigate through a decision that you don't necessarily agree with when you have to implement that decision within your organization. Go be great. We'll talk to everyone later. Bye. If you enjoy what you're hearing, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps us get others to where they're going.